discussing timpani with regards to Senior High Audition Etudes set number 3. Before we start, remember that as an auditionee, one of the first things you want to do when you enter the room is adjust the drums to you. So you come in and check your playing areas, whatever naturally feels comfortable, and then move your drums to those positions. With regards to set number 3, timpani, there are 2 items that we're going to be discussing. The first is controlling the dotted eighth, double dotted eighth rather, rhythms in the first 2 measures, and then sticking choices for the accented 32nd note figures in measure 3 and measure 4. This is a slow etude, so you can work on these types of rhythms, and so let's talk about that now. First is with the dotted rhythms. Simply work on this with the 8th note at 80. So I would be thinking 1 E and then 2 E and a 1 E and then 2 E and 1. So 1 E and then 2 E and a 1 E and then 2 to get up. So you have the 32nd notes at the end of the first beat, and then you have the 64th notes in that same place. You're just playing 2 instead of 1. So make sure that when you're practicing that you are working with the 8th note pattern or even a 16th note going as a subdivision for your practice sessions. Next are the sticking options for measure 3. For the first 3 beats, they are fairly straightforward. I will tell you my preferred sticking. Very slowly here. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, right. The tricky part is beat 4 of measure 3. This will be a lot of right hand motion in this. The sticking I suggest is as such. Right, right, left, right, 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 left, right, 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 left, right, 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 left, right, right. Next, we'll be discussing the mallet portion for Senior High Audition Etudes set number 3. This is a fairly difficult etude, even for an advanced marimba player, and so I want to discuss some of the concepts involved that you will need to implement when playing this etude. The first is we're going to begin at measure 13, and play this at tempo for you. So you'll need to be familiar with what Lee Howard Stevens defines as a double lateral stroke, where essentially I'm doing a double vertical stroke, but I'm doing a quick rotation, and so I'm able to get 2 notes out of it. Rather than doing single independent strokes where I'd be stroking each one out and really overpowering that. And what I want to hear is this G harmonic minor scale, roughly. The next is measure 14. This is a rather difficult passage, and there's a motion change in your left hand from the single independent to the double lateral stroke. And so what I'm meaning is your single independent stroke, where it's a single note independent of the other, and then your double lateral stroke. Whereas for me, what I think of is a double vertical stroke with the rotation. So there's a wrist break from the double vertical stroke, but it also has the horizontal element to get the double lateral. My suggestion for you to do in 14, like the other exercises that I've mentioned, is to get away from the music for a second and only work on the technical facility to required to execute this passage. Let me give you an example of something I would work on. So I'd isolate each hand and work on those double strokes to ensure that one is that there's a consistency of rhythm, that the 32nd notes are equivalent from hand to hand. The second is to work for articulation balance, to make sure that all four mallets have the same articulation, that one doesn't sound round and one sounds harsh. So to work on the very front of the note in the ictus, if you will, of each beat. Next is you're going to have to switch from what we would refer to as the lower manual and the upper manual, or from white keys to black keys. An important concept in this is what's called a push-pull technique. And to demonstrate, I'll just play D-flat arpeggio for you. And what I'm doing, so when I go from the D-flat to the F, is I pull back, simply pull back. If you're not familiar with this technique, this is an important one to learn, especially for fast passages like we see in measure 14. So we strike the D flat and we pull back, we shift back rather, to F, rather than going into this position like we would need to do if we were playing double stops. So this push-pull technique, so I'd have pull, straight line, push, pull, if I were doing a D-flat arpeggio. And this will be the same concept in measure 14. So if I do this slow, you've got straight line here, you've got push here in the left hand, you got push in the right hand, pull for both, straight line, then you've got pull. So those things happen. So my elbow is simply going to move back and all of my strokes will be similar to what I was doing. Next is the senior high auditions etude set number 3, and we're going to be discussing the standard part. The first item of discussion is measure 21, and this measure is the same measure as you'll see in set 1. I think these roll changes are very important for a snare drummer to work on. And so what I'm doing in the 5/8 measure, this is measure 21 of the etude, is the first 3 eighth notes of the dotted quarter is that I'm playing multiple bounces on the first 3 eighth notes, and then I do an eighth note triplet. And the crescendo really happens on that last quarter note to really drive. So again, dotted quarter, my hand motion is eighth notes, and then the quarter note, or respective eighth notes 4 and 5 of the 5/8 measure, goes into an eighth note triplet and crescendos into measure 22. Next is measure 28, and you have these tenuto buzzes. Just as a point of clarification, the concert or orchestral rolls are notated as traditional, with traditional 3 slashes or a 32nd note rhythm. The open stroke rolls, like you will see in measure 25, are notated with the normal double of the rhythm. So just for a point of clarification, and in measure 28 and 29, these will be one-handed buzzes. So this is measure 28, a little slower. So. Last in this etude, this is set 3 for snare drum, is transitioning from measure 29 through measure 30, and it comes from all of these quarter note triplet or hemiola figures where you're adding and subtracting grace notes. I'm going to do all these with my right hand as the primary note. I'm going to do the majority of the grace notes with my left hand. So slow here, no dynamic contrast. So one trick is to make sure that I'm not buzzing the drag figures. So when you actually look at the rhythm of a flam versus the drag, you'll see that the flam is notated as an eighth and that the drags are notated as a 32nd. So they should be played in exactly the same spot, except I'm going to play 2 notes instead of 1 to play a drag versus the flam. The last is the last note of the quarter note triplet in measure 30, and my sticking for that is going to be right, left, left, right. So if you're starting on measure 30, I would have this. And in my mind, I'm thinking a crescendo for that 4-stroke drag figure. So I'm thinking 1, 2, so the crescendo. And not this. So making sure that I hear the primary note, which is that last partial of the quarter note triplet. Next is the Senior High Audition Etude Set 3, the final portion of the etude, which is scored for castanets. A couple of integral parts that you need before you even worry about playing the music is the 2 main things are, one is to get a quality pair of paddle castanets. Myself, I prefer these Black Swamp models, but there are numerous other companies that make quality paddle castanets. The second thing is that you're going to need somewhere to rest your leg so that you can use your leg to assist in the roll figures as well as just playing the instrument. For myself, I have a hard case that I've had for several decades, and I use it. I carry all of my mallets from my audition in there, any relevant music or trap table towels and such. And so I carry everything in that and actually bring the hard case into the audition with me. That way it's the same height. Every time I practice, it's always the same height. With this etude, we're going to talk about 3 primary techniques that you need to use. The first is when there are accents by themselves, then I'm going to hit 2 notes together, like so. So at 37, and such figures. The second is simply just your single notes, like we're going to need at the end, or any of the inside figures in 37 and 38. And perhaps most importantly is there are roll notations that I must follow. Castanets are a hard instrument, and one of the techniques required is what's called a redouble roll. And just like it sounds, is that I'm trying to get 2 notes per paddle. So with the model that I have with the Black Swamp, an easier way to do it is to turn them over, and then I can play this redouble roll. So that is an example, measure 39.